In running a private practice, you need to have excellent systems and processes in place. And one of the leading electronic health record systems that you need to check out is TherapyNotes. They're who I use in my practice. TherapyNotes provides a patient portal, also the ability to schedule online, send appointment reminders, also handle your collections, insurance claims. It's all in one platform for the clinical side of your practice. And they also have telehealth available through their platform. As I said, they are who I use in my practice and couldn't do without them. So be sure and check them out. Go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and you'll be able to see what they have available. And also be sure and use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. That's TherapyNotes at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Hello, I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, where we explore the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 236 of the Practice of Therapy podcast, and I'm Gordon Brewer, and I'm back. If you've been listening to the podcast for the last month, the month of June, you know that my good and dear friend Whitney Owens did a podcast takeover for me, and it was so great to have her do that. And I'm so happy to have Whitney is part of my life and circle of colleagues. She and I are in a mastermind group together, and we just were brainstorming ideas and thought, well, this would be a fun thing to do for Whitney to do a podcast takeover. And I'm really glad she shared a lot of her wisdom and knowledge just over the last 4 episodes. And big thanks to Aaron Potratz and Nathan Hawkins for joining her in the previous episode. And they are good friends as well, other colleagues in this whole private practice building space. But anyway, I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest for this episode, Megan Swan. Megan is a health and wellness coach, and we really do kind of a deep dive into self-care and what it means to take care of ourselves as healthpreneurs, as she refers to it. Those of us in the kind of the healthcare arena, they're also entrepreneurs and business owners and practice owners. So I think you're going to hear just a lot of great stuff, and just thinking about how do we do a better job at self-care and just looking at our whole lifestyle and how we want to organize ourselves in our business. So looking forward to getting to my conversation with Megan. But before we get there, one of the things I'd love for you to do is go over and check out the Practice Launch Club. It's a new exclusive membership community that I've started, particularly for those folks that are in those beginning stages of private practice. So if you've got a practice that's maybe less than 3 years old, or you're in that area of making less than $100,000 a year in your practice. Not that number is all that important, but it can be for some folks. And you are really wanting to get some support and community around building your practice. That is what the Practice Launch Club is for. So I invite you to go over to check it out at practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. And you're going to get to be hearing more and more about that from me here in upcoming episodes. But also, before I get to my conversation with Megan, I'd love for you to hear from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
As your practice grows, the systems and processes you have in place will keep your practice running smoothly. That is why it is important to have an electronic health record system that is specific to mental health providers. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. They are who Gordon uses in his practice. And did I mention that they are one of the top-rated EHRs for mental health private practices? Their support is also second to none. Be sure to check them out at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Be sure to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so glad for you all to get to know Megan Swan. Megan, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the offer to share my ideas in this realm.
Yes. And when Megan reached out for me, I thought, this has just been it's interesting in doing this podcast. I kind of seems like I go through periods where I'm on different themes of different ideas. And I know just self-care has been, I think, on everybody's radar over the last 2 years. But I think now that we're just kind of coming out of post-COVID, or hopefully I can say that without too much reservation, but people are really paying more and more attention to that, and really how we can balance life and work and all of that sort of thing. So, Megan, as I start with everyone, why don't you tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed?
Sure. Well, I'll touch the highlights because it's kind of a long story. Mm-hmm. But I am Canadian, and I basically left Toronto when I was 30, which was 13 years ago now, on my own eat, pray, love little journey, if you will. My plan was to go to Mexico and teach English and yoga for a year, and then to go to Bali. And then I didn't know where I would go. But long story short, 13 years later, I'm still in my first stop here in the south of Mexico. And I married my husband, who I met pretty much a couple months into arriving. So we've been together for 12 years. And we have 2 beautiful boys. And really, it was post pregnancy. I kind of had dipped my toe in the wellness industry with becoming a yoga teacher, but I was still kind of living a double life, if you will. I was still doing a lot of things that really weren't that healthy outside of that. And it wasn't until I got pregnant, which I think is a really common time for most women to become hyper-focused on what they're putting into their bodies, right? Mm-hmm. So that, and then birthing my 2 boys, and I basically needed to hire for myself a health coach after my second child. I just didn't feel like I was bouncing back in terms of feeling motivated, just about life in general. Like I just felt like I was getting through my days kind of thing. And so this is how I ended up in the health and wellness industry. I first had a health coach, then I, within a few months of working with her, thought, no, this is what I want to do. So I became certified as a health coach through IINN, which is the, sort of major certification place. They're out of New York. And from there, I did a bunch of other sort of certification, most of it, some of us go through this sort of certification, if you will, before we really throw ourselves into, finding a lot of experience and feeling confident enough to launch ourselves in a new career. So I'm an expert in detox as well, and a plant-based chef. And I still incorporate movement and yoga into a lot of what I do with clients, at least the philosophy behind it. And full circle, I had many wellness and mindset clients for several years, mostly women, although I do work with men too. And I saw that, when they started taking radical responsibility for their own self-care, when I refer to wellness, I'm referring to physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And I 6-pillar system that I walk my clients through. And, I really just meet them where they are. But long story short, when you get to a point of optimal wellness, you're really in a much more empowered place to make decisions and take action differently than you might have when you were just kind of, getting by kind of thing. And a lot of these women have decided they want to go into a similar business like I have. And so that's another aspect of my business now is supporting wellpreneurs in their wellness as they build their business, because oftentimes those of us in the health and wellness industry, it's hard to walk the talk, and really keep that at the forefront. And so I teach mostly women again, but how to build optimal wellness into their systems, the structure, and their business.
Right. And it's such an important thing, because I know, at least in the niche which this podcast is in, particularly mental health, it is at least over the last 2 years. And again, it's interesting how everything's in the context of COVID now. So, I mean, it's just a whole new phenomenon that we're dealing with. But one of the things about it is that we are in general, people that are mental health providers are getting kind of overwhelmed with the number of clients that they're getting. And it's most people I talk to here lately, their practices are full, and being able to set those limits for yourself, I think, goes much farther than just a schedule. And so I love what you're doing as far as just thinking about the whole big picture of it. I know, not to get too far off on a tangent, but I know over this last year, I've really been much more intentional about my health, which is, and I'm glad I have been, because I think I was headed down a road where it was going to be harder and harder to recover from that.
Yeah, well, I think, really prioritizing any one aspect of your health and wellness is like a really important place to start, and works as a buffer to stress at the end of the day. And one thing that is essential in our industry is having boundaries. And that could be, like you say, something like the structure of a schedule, and maybe, cutting back on the number of clients that you are capable of, maybe taking, carving out an hour or a half day a week to really focus on yourself, knowing that, if you are in your own business, that's an investment in your business to do that, because otherwise it's not going to be sustainable, the pace that you're maintaining. And another is energetic boundaries. It's really important to have, I love working with clients, but I really get involved, like I'm holding massive compassionate space for them. And in order to do that, I'm in their lives, but that can't carry with me throughout my day and throughout my week. And so I have practices, it could be something really simple. Cold water is very grounding. You can just wash your hands with cold water and just intentionally kind of like shake off that last session. You can light a candle, burn incense, those kind of things, kind of clear the air and the energy and reset your mind in terms of, giving it an intentional closure of that energy that you shared with that person, and then allowing you to move on to the next, or, whatever else.
Right. What sort of themes have you seen emerging for folks in the wellness community, as far as things that people typically struggle with that you help them, are able to help them with?
Yeah, well, I think one of our biggest challenges just in general across the board is compartmentalizing, when everything is digital, everything, basically we're all on call 24/7 now, like doctors were 20 years ago, right? But it's really giving ourselves permission to create digital boundaries, digital buffers. For me, I talk about digital wellness, and understanding that if you don't put those boundaries or those buffers in place. So what is a digital buffer? For an example is, having a very, having structure about when you're on your phone, not the first 30 minutes that you wake up in the day, and not in the last 30 minutes of your day, kind of those bookmarks. Ideally it's longer, but, and if that seems overwhelming, like start with 5 minutes. And just allowing yourself to really be free of that constant interaction with information and everybody else's expectations of you, and just really be present in the body. And I think those are some ways that you can really mitigate your own anxiety and overwhelm, because what I'm seeing essentially is either people on the verge of burnout or, trying to recover and looking for tools for prevention moving forward, because, COVID was intense for all of us in different ways.
Right. As you were saying that, Megan, I was just thinking about, I love that term digital boundaries, because I think, that's one of the things that I know just in my own world, so to speak, always feeling like, oh, I've got to check email, or what am I going to miss out on? All of those kinds of things. And, one practice that I've kind of informally adopted is particularly on Sundays, I don't look at email at all. And, I think setting up those, like you said, those digital boundaries where you're really limiting that, because as everyone knows, it's constant. I mean, it's just constantly coming in and I think we can easily get overwhelmed with, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. And it just can take a toll on us in the long run.
Yeah, it's really important to give yourself permission. Like, when am I offline, in terms of when am I actually unplugging? And then, I mean, what also becomes important is, what are you doing instead? So there's certain things that you could be doing that are much more impactful, like, physically being out in nature, getting sun on your face before 9 a.m. So it kind of resets your circadian rhythms and helps you get to bed and get to sleep the following night. Having some sort of movement practice, eating as healthy as you can, whatever that means for you. And, having some sort of mindful practice. Most of my clients, I've gotten into meditation, but it doesn't need to be that. You can just make something you already have to do in your day more mindful, such as wash the dishes, or, when you're showering in the morning, you can like madly suds yourself up, or you can, just take a mindful moment. It's really a matter of adding 60 seconds to whatever you're doing. It doesn't even have to be more time. It's just the intention and the energy while you're doing it. Like, are you in hurry mode, thinking about all the emails that you didn't answer, or are you just, enjoying how the water feels and maybe like taking the aroma of the soap and, just being a little bit more there in everything you do.
Right. Yeah. And all of that, I think, is so important. As I mentioned, this last year, I've really been more intentional for myself, just with all that is going on. And I've shared on this podcast, one of the things that I've been contending with is just my wife is disabled and she is in a wheelchair, and we have caregivers and all of that sort of thing. So being able to, like you said, have that base and that grounding of different daily rituals and different practices. For me, I was kind of chuckling to myself, well, it's good to hear from Megan that I'm doing things right. Most every morning I'm out. We have a green belt near my house, and I'm out walking or running on the green belt most every morning before 8:00 in the morning. And so, nice. That is just that's just a sacred space, and it doesn't have to be that way for everyone, but that's what keeps me grounded. That's what keeps me, in the right place mentally and physically and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you say. That doesn't have to be for everyone, because that's, kind of what I talk about with my work, that there's no one size fits all wellness. And there's so many health and wellness trends or routines that are presented to us that, if you don't do it this exact way or this many days a week or at this time of the day, it's not worth doing. And also, that you should be doing all these things at the same time. No, I really work to give my clients the permission they need, mentally and energetically to select the few wellness tools, if you will, or practices or rituals that really speak to them, like For some people, it works really well to, drink a tea, then meditate, then journal. And they want to try and get it all in, and they do 10-minute bursts or whatever. And for others, getting outside and doing a movement practice. And, there's so many benefits that go along with that. And then also not adding on a layer of guilt when for whatever reason that day, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, is we start to feel a lot of self-judgment comes in when we're not, quote unquote, keeping up with our wellness routine. And that's really counterproductive. We just need to trust that we're doing enough.
Right. Yeah. It's, I love this way of thinking about things, just because I think, again, I have this, I call it my theory of change, and that most of us do better when we make small changes rather than great big ones. And really, if you think about it, I like to use the metaphor of, if an airline pilot's flying from point A to point B, they have to maintain a certain heading. And if they change that heading just by 1 degree, which isn't much, over time, it makes a huge difference from where you're ending up. So I think doing those small changes, those small daily routines, and creating new habits and that sort of thing make a huge difference for people.
Yes, it's so true. I mean, I think that sometimes we can get caught up in this sort of, quick solution culture. We want results, and we want them now. And, we have to appreciate that you probably took several years, if not maybe even decades, to get yourself into the position you are now, and expecting in, like a 21-day challenge or a 10-day diet or something that everything's going to change. I mean, I think those things are informative, so that people really see like how dramatically they could feel better if they just did XYZ a little bit more. But they often present you in these challenges, right? They often present you with a pace of change that is not sustainable, and therefore very difficult for someone to integrate into their life, and more likely going to fall off and just go back to whatever their comfort zone was, right? Right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Megan, tell folks a little bit about your process and, kind of the trainings and things that you do.
Sure. Well, I work one-on-one with clients, and for 6 months at a time. I think it's really important that, for just what we were talking about, in order to feel really supported, and for us to have enough time to go through some trial and error, because that's what it's all about when you're finding the exact wellness tools that work for you. It's not only learning what they are and implementing them, it is learning how to read and connect with your own body and mind a little bit better, so that hey, I think, this morning routine is just becoming more of a thing on my to-do list. It's not really serving me anymore. I'm going to try doing something else. Or, someone told me I need to meditate for 20 minutes a day, but I'm so stressed because I can't find 20 minutes a day. So we'll find another way to integrate mindfulness, or maybe another way to approach meditation that doesn't seem so overwhelming that you just say, it's not for me, right? So in the 6 pillars of wellness that I work with, we touch a lot. I think sleep is number one priority. It's not only the quantity, but the quality of our sleep cycle. I always talk about clean, intuitive eating, and it's a whole massive topic on itself. Some sort of mindful practice, talking about connections we have. So, community, the connection we have with ourselves, our major relationships in our lives, our family, and what else? I'm missing one, movement. Yes. So, finding a movement practice. And I was actually just sharing on social media on Sunday, lately I'm a runner. That I got into running when I got sober 4 years ago. And so I've run multiple half and a one marathon. And at the beginning of the year, I put this intention out there that I was going to run another marathon by the end of this year. And I don't think that's going to happen. What I've been doing on the treadmill lately is sort of some sort of mix of Pilates and stretching and essentially. And I find that's what I'm excited to do, to get on the treadmill. So I'd rather do that for 20, 30 minutes than, have layers of self-judgment that I'm not training for XYZ, and just be more in the moment and in the flow, and make that okay. And, really just enjoying your life and what you're doing is so important in order to get that whole benefit out of it. So, and so that's how I work with wellness clients. And then if you're interested in really starting a business in the wellness space, I work with, the health, wellness, spiritual coaches and practitioners. Then,
yes.
And you're really at the beginning and you're not really sure how to start, or you've started and you need to accept that you've kind of thrown your own health and wellness out of the window a little bit to get your business started. That's where I came in and we kind of rework the structure and the framework of your business to really honor wellness, to be like a wellness first perspective throughout your business.
Yes, that's great. I love that. And that's, I think it's important work for everyone to do along the way, because I think it's what's going to keep, one of the things that people get overwhelmed with is just that whole work-life balance. And I hear that from clients I consult with as well. And so I think being intentional about getting some things in place is good. So, well, Megan, I want to be respectful of your time. Tell folks how they can be in touch with you and that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, you can find me. My website is meganswanwellness.com. I'm the same. That's my handle on Instagram at Megan Swan Wellness. I also have a podcast called Energetically You. I love to interview people that, all sorts of things around mindset, wellness, healthy habits, those kind of things. And I always focus on energy. For me, that was a huge transformation when I started focusing on optimizing my wellness personally. I just had more motivation and energy and eventually confidence in ways that I hadn't imagined before. Just, doing better and more consistent self-care in multiple things. So
awesome. And we'll have links here in the show notes and the show summary for people to access that easily. So, well, Megan, I'm so glad you joined me on the podcast, and hopefully we can have another conversation here soon. One of the things I love about doing this podcast is the fact that I get to talk with really interesting and fascinating people, and really, really nice people as well, like I get to do with Megan. And it was so great and refreshing to hear from her, at least for me. One of the things that I've been doing, haven't shared much of this on the podcast, but I thought I'd maybe share it a little bit here at the end. I've been really on just a big health journey of my own over the last few years. In particularly during COVID, got a little too sedentary, and really, my health had really not gone. It was not going in the direction it should be going. And I had gained a lot of weight. So over the last 2 years, I've really changed my eating habits and really focusing more on what I'm eating and exercising more. And I'll share with you that I've lost about 40 pounds from where I started. So I'm pretty proud of that fact, and I'm running again. And, so I'm really, really enjoying, just a new healthy lifestyle that I've gotten myself back into. So just thought I'd share that, maybe not so much as a brag, but maybe a little bit of inspiration. And if you have any other questions about that, I'd love to share that. And maybe I'll do a whole episode on just kind of my health changes and my health journey. So with all of this, but I was thinking about that in my conversation with Megan. And again, thanks to her for being on the podcast, and be sure and check out her stuff. You can find links in the show notes here, and her website again, real quickly, is meganswanwellness.com. And she's got some great stuff on her website. I was just checking it out again. And also, be sure and take a look at our sponsors, TherapyNotes, and you can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, to get 2 months of their services for free. And also be sure and check out the Practice Launch Club. Especially if you're in those beginning stages of starting a private practice or growing a practice, be sure and check out that resource. You can find out more about that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/launch club. So take care, folks. Be sure to follow us wherever you're listening to the podcast. And I'm looking forward to our next episodes. I've got a lot of great people coming up. Take care, folks. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.